What if I placed just $100 in your hand today and quietly said to you, this could become a million one day? Not through luck, not through gambling, not through some mysterious shortcut whispered on the internet late at night, but through the same quiet forces that shape forests, rivers, and entire ecosystems over time. Nature has been turning tiny beginnings into vast abundance for millions of years. A single seed becomes a towering tree. A small trickle of water becomes a river powerful enough to carve through mountains. And yet when it comes to our own lives, many people forget these simple truths. They imagine that wealth must arrive suddenly, dramatically, with fireworks and applause. But the deeper mystery is not how wealth grows. The deeper mystery is why so many people fail to recognize the simple patterns that make it possible. If I had only $100, I would not begin by chasing money at all. I would begin by understanding something far more powerful. I would begin by understanding how growth actually works. You see, when people imagine becoming wealthy, they often imagine a moment, a breakthrough, a sudden success that changes everything overnight. But nature rarely works like that. In the natural world, the most powerful systems begin quietly, almost invisibly. A forest does not appear overnight. It begins with a small seed resting quietly in the soil. A river does not appear suddenly across the land. It begins as a small drop of water gathering with others, slowly finding its path downhill. And wealth, true and lasting wealth, behaves in exactly the same way. It begins small, often so small that most people overlook it entirely. If you and I were sitting together somewhere peaceful, perhaps walking along a path through a quiet landscape, and you asked me honestly, how would you become a millionaire if you started with only $100? I would pause for a moment, because the real answer might surprise you. The money itself would not be my focus, not in the beginning. The first thing I would think about is something much more important. I would think about value, because money is not the true prize in life. Money is simply a signal that value has been created somewhere. Imagine, for a moment, a tiny ant moving across the forest floor. At first glance, the ant appears small and unimportant. It carries a crumb, perhaps, something no larger than a grain of rice. If you looked at that one crumb alone, you might think it hardly matters. But the ant is not alone. Behind that ant is an entire colony, thousands upon thousands of ants working together, each ant carrying tiny pieces of food. Tiny efforts repeated over and over again. No single crumb changes the world, but together, those crumbs feed an entire civilization of ants. Their success does not come from one big action. It comes from a system, a simple system repeated every day. If I began with $100, I would think like that colony. I would not try to turn the 100 into 10,000 overnight. I would not gamble it on risky promises. Instead, I would ask myself a quiet question. What small action could I repeat that creates value for other people? Because once you discover that action, once you learn how to create even a small amount of value consistently, you have discovered something far more important than money. You have discovered a system. Now, here is something very interesting about systems. At the beginning, they rarely look impressive. In fact, they often look almost boring. Imagine a farmer planting seeds in a field. One seed today, another tomorrow. Day after day, week after week. To someone watching from a distance, nothing remarkable seems to be happening. But beneath the soil, something extraordinary is beginning to unfold. Roots are spreading. Life is forming. Energy is gathering quietly. And then one day, green shoots appear across the field. What once looked empty now begins to grow. This is exactly how wealth begins when it is built the right way. It begins with small efforts that most people ignore. Perhaps you learn a skill. Perhaps you begin offering a service that solves a small problem. Maybe you help someone write something, fix something, design something, teach something. At first, the reward may be small, $10, $20, $50. Many people become discouraged at this stage because they are still thinking about the million. But the million is not the goal at the beginning. The goal at the beginning is proof that you can create value. Once that proof exists, everything changes. Because if you can create $10 once, you can learn to do it again. And if you can do it again, you can improve the process. Soon the 10 becomes 20, the 20 becomes 50, and slowly, quietly, the system becomes stronger. Nature gives us another beautiful example of this process high in the mountains. When snow melts under the warmth of the sun, small streams begin to form between the rocks. At first, they are tiny, barely noticeable. You could step over them without thinking. But those streams do not remain small forever. They join with other streams. 2 become 4, 4 become 10, 10 become a flowing river. And eventually, that river becomes powerful enough to shape entire valleys across the land. Wealth behaves in exactly the same way. The first stream of income may be small. Then another stream appears. Perhaps you create something that can be sold more than once. Perhaps you teach a skill to others. Perhaps you create something useful online that people want to learn from. At first, these streams are small trickles, but when they join together, something powerful begins to happen. Momentum begins to build.
But there is another lesson nature teaches us, and it is one many people struggle to accept. Growth takes time. Consider the bamboo plant. When bamboo seeds are planted, something curious happens. For years, nothing appears above the ground. 1 year passes, then another. Sometimes even 4 years pass with no visible growth at all. A person watching might assume the seed has failed, but beneath the soil, something remarkable is happening. The bamboo is building a network of roots, strong roots, deep roots that spread quietly through the earth. Then suddenly, after years of invisible preparation, the bamboo begins to rise. Not slowly, but astonishingly fast, sometimes growing dozens of feet in a single season. People who see this moment often believe the growth happened overnight. But the truth is very different. The growth was happening the entire time, hidden beneath the surface. This is what many people misunderstand about success. The visible results often appear suddenly, but the real work has been happening quietly for years. If I started with $100, I would expect the early stages to look unimpressive. I would not measure progress by dramatic leaps. I would measure progress by learning, by improving, by strengthening the system a little each day. Another powerful force in the modern world is attention. Attention has become one of the most valuable resources on earth. Entire companies compete for it every second. Advertisements fight for it. Social media platforms design systems to capture it. But very few people learn how to guide their own attention deliberately. Where your attention goes, your life begins to grow. Just like sunlight falling on a garden, attention determines what flourishes and what fades away. If I were starting again today with only $100, I would protect my attention carefully. I would direct it toward learning useful things, toward understanding problems that people face every day. Because problems are not simply frustrations, they are opportunities waiting for someone curious enough to solve them. Look around you. Think about the small inconveniences people experience daily. A tool that doesn't work properly, a task that takes too long, information that is difficult to understand. Each one of those frustrations contains hidden value. If you can make something easier, faster, clearer, or more enjoyable for others, you have created value. And value, over time, attracts money the way flowers attract bees. At first, perhaps only a few people notice, but if the value is real, word spreads quietly. One person tells another, another tells 2 more, and slowly the system grows. Now here is a gentle truth that many people discover too late in life. Wealth is rarely built by chasing money itself. It is built by chasing usefulness. When you focus on helping people solve problems, money often appears as a natural side effect. This is why many successful people speak less about money and more about value, because they understand that value is the engine. Money is simply the fuel that flows through it. If I had $100 today, I might spend it learning something valuable. Perhaps I would buy a few books that teach a useful skill. Perhaps I would invest in tools that allow me to create something helpful online. Perhaps I would learn how to communicate ideas clearly. because clear communication alone can open countless doors. Then I would begin small. I would help one person, then another. Each experience would teach me something new. Each small success would strengthen the system. Over time, something interesting happens when you consistently create value. People begin to trust you, and trust is one of the most powerful forms of wealth in the world. Trust leads to opportunity. Opportunity leads to growth. Growth leads to new possibilities you could never have predicted at the beginning. Many people imagine wealth as a straight path, but it is rarely like that. It is more like a river winding through a landscape. Sometimes it flows quickly, sometimes slowly. Sometimes it changes direction entirely. But as long as the river keeps moving forward, it eventually reaches the sea. So if you were starting today with $100, do not think about the million immediately. Think about the seed. Think about the system. Think about the small actions that create value again and again. Because the miracle is not in one giant leap. The miracle is in consistency. And here is something I want you to remember deeply. You are not limited by where you start. Many extraordinary journeys begin in very small places. A single idea, a single decision, a single moment of curiosity. If this conversation has stirred something in you, even a small spark of possibility, hold on to that spark. Ask yourself what small action you could begin today. What problem could you help solve? What value could you quietly create for others? Because the most fascinating systems in the world are not forests or rivers or coral reefs. They are human lives. Lives shaped by thousands of small choices made day after day. And if something in these reflections resonated with you, if it gave you a new way of thinking about growth, value, and opportunity, I would love to hear your thoughts. Tell me in the comments what you would do if you started with $100. What small system would you begin building today? And if you enjoy exploring ideas like these, quiet reflections about life, growth, and the patterns that shape our world, consider subscribing and joining me again for the next journey. Because the story of growth, whether in nature or in life, is always unfolding. And the next chapter might just begin with something as small as $100.